Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. There are copies of the agenda here for those of you who are not or don't have a copy or unfamiliar with it. At this time, I'd like to call the December 11th, 2012 Planning Board meeting to order. The first item on the agenda are minutes, November 27th of 2012. Mr. Secretary.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move the minutes as amended.
Second.
Discussion. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained. Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to move that we take correspondence out of order.
Have a second on that?
Second.
We have a letter in our correspondence from Mr. Ament on behalf of the Steamship Authority, and there are people who are present here representing the Steamship Authority. We won't be voting on this. They would simply like to make a presentation to us, which everybody should have a map in front of them. Pat, I'll share with you. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained. Motion carries. Therefore, the next item on the agenda is correspondence. The first item under correspondence is a letter from Attorney Ament to the Planning Board in care of myself. Dear Ralph, as I'm sure you know, within a couple of years, the Woods Hole Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket Steamship Authority plans to develop its off-site parking facility at the Acme Precast property on Technology Park Drive off Thomas B. Landers Road across from the new Falmouth Youth Hockey League rink. This facility, referred to below as the Steamship Authority parking lot, will consolidate Steamship Authority parking lots in Katomet and on Gifford Street, which will then be closed. Ferry passenger traffic on Gifford Street and other streets near Falmouth Village should be reduced. In anticipation of developing the parking facility off Thomas B. Landers Road, the Steamship Authority has agreed to buy property at 50 Bernard's E. St. Jean Drive for the use as its bus maintenance and storage facility. The 4.3-acre parcel in Falmouth Technology Park was developed by and is presently occupied by the Falmouth Sheet Metal. The property abuts the Steamship Authority parking lot to the south and has no residential abutters. And the existing building and the site are very suitable for the Steamship Authority purposes, provided there is a driveway connection with the Steamship Authority parking lot. 50 Bernard St. Jean Drive is within the Falmouth Technology Park. To accommodate the proposed Steamship Authority use with a driveway connection to the Steamship Authority parking, the Falmouth Economic Development Industrial Corporation, EDIC, has approved a modification to its development agreement with the Cape Cod Commission. The Regulatory Committee of the Cape Cod Commission is expected to approve the modification on December 10th. That would be yesterday, 2012. The modification applies specifically to the Steamship Authority's use of 50 Bernard E. St. Jean Drive, adjusting the terms of the development agreement to the Steamship Authority's needs. but maintaining development agreement provisions, limiting traffic trip generation, and requiring 40% open space and a 100-foot front yard setback requirement, and conditions regulating drainage and hazardous materials and limiting wastewater flows, etc. One very important aspect of the modification is that the Steamship Authority buses will not use Bernard East St. Jean Drive once the Steamship Authority parking lot property is available, no later than 2016. At that time, buses will enter and exit the bus facility only through the Steamship Authority parking lot. Also, the modification prohibits use of the 50 Bernard E. St. Jean property for any parking of ferry passenger vehicles. A copy of the modification to develop an agreement document has been provided to Brian Curry and is enclosed as part of the correspondence previously sent to the building commissioner. In connection with the original development of 50 Bernard E. St. Jean Drive, the planning board issued a site plan review decision on August 16th, 2000. Because the Steamship Authority is exempt from local zoning, the Steamship Authority redevelopment and change of use does not require modification of the site plan review decision. However, as designs are finalized in the coming months, the Steamship Authority will have plans reviewed for permitting by the Falmouth Building, Engineering, and Fire and Rescue Departments. The Steamship Authority will invite input from the Planning Department as well. A site feature that is critical to the Steamship Authority plans and that must be addressed before the Steamship Authority purchases the property, required by the end of this year, is the wildlife corridor that crosses the property along the boundary with the Steamship Authority parking lot. The Steamship Authority must be able to build a driveway through the wildlife corridor. The wildlife corridor is a zoning requirement and as such should not apply to the Steamship Authority. However, Chuck Martinson, the acting director of Natural Resources, advised earlier this week that although he does not object to there being a driveway connection, he would like the Steamship Authority to agree not to install fencing or any other structural barrier to wildlife movement within the wildlife corridor, which is a key provision of the zoning bylaw, Wildlife Corridor Provisions, Section 240-94A3. Wayne Lamson, the Steamship Authority's general manager, is recommending to the Steamship Authority's board that the Steamship Authority agree to that and record a covenant with the town. I submitted a request for determination to the building commissioner, as this seemed to be a matter of interpretation as to how the Steamship Authority's use of the wildlife corridor might be regulated. Following Chuck Martins's request, I submitted the enclosed proposed covenant to the building commissioner to review. Yesterday, Brian Curry, with whom I had spoken about the Steamship Authority plans, this was dated December 7th, advised me that he and the building commissioner recommend that the planning board discuss the proposal since the 2000 site plan review decision is presently in effect. Therefore, I respectfully request that this discussion of the driveway connection through the wildlife corridor to the Steamship Authority parking lot be placed on the planning board agenda for next Tuesday, December 11th, 2012. Our hope is that the planning board will take what action is necessary to convey its support for the Steamship Authority development, such as authorizing the town planner to advise the building commissioner that the planning board does not object to the Steamship Authority's building their driveway connection as proposed, and recommending the town's acceptance of a covenant as submitted by the Steamship Authority. The Steamship Authority is a public instrumentality that provides essential governmental services. The new parking facility and the proposed bus maintenance storage facility will improve the Steamship Authority's operations and reduce ferry traffic impacts in Falmouth and Bourne. The planning board's help in considering this matter quickly will be very much appreciated, as the terms of the property transfer require closing this year, and the driveway connection appears to be the remaining pre-closing problem to be dealt with. The EDIC and the Cape Cod Commission have been very cooperative in trying to make this transaction possible. The first meeting with the EDIC concerning the Steamship Authority purchase could not be held until November 13th, 2012, and the EDIC voted to support on December 3rd, 2012. Please contact me if you have any questions. I look forward to discussing this matter with the planning board next week. Very truly yours, Robert H. Ament. Mr. Ament.
Mr. Herbst, thank you very much. Thank you for reading that. I couldn't have said it better. And I'm sorry that it was so long, but hopefully it tells everything that we need you for tonight. With me tonight, besides Mike McGrath, who in a moment will describe this plan to you, is the Town of Falmouth's representative to the Board of Governors of the Steamship Authority, Bob Marshall, right there, and next to him is Wayne Lamson, who's the general manager of the Steamship Authority. So what I've already written to you well describes what the project is. The Cape Cod Commission did approve the modification of the Tech Park Development Agreement at its meeting yesterday morning, so the EDIC and the Cape Cod Commission are together on this proposal. And our concern, as I've said, is knowing that we can cut through the wildlife corridor with a driveway. We felt that this was something that the building commissioner should give an interpretation on, because it really has to do with whether a private driveway through connecting the property is allowable in the wildlife corridor, which we believe it is, irrespective of the status of the Steamship Authority as generally exempt from zoning issues. But it's of such critical importance that we felt we needed the building commissioner as the zoning enforcement officer to verify our conclusion. He felt it should be discussed by the planning board. We appreciate this opportunity to do this. And what our hope is that the planning board, through the town planner, after this meeting, will be able to communicate to the building commissioner that this is okay as far as the planning board is concerned, so that the building commissioner will verify this. And part of this ends up being that because of the request of the director of the Department of Natural Resources, that we'll put a covenant on record in favor of the town that the wildlife corridor, though there'll be a driveway through it, won't have any fencing that interferes with the movement of wildlife, which is what the wildlife corridor, in fact, is all about. So I think with that, I'd like Mike McGrath to speak primarily about what's going on in the wildlife corridor and briefly about what's on site, although this is not a site plan review process.
Good evening. My name is Mike McGrath. I'm a registered engineer and professional land surveyor. I work for Holmes and McGrath. I have here tonight a colored plan. I think I sent you a PDF of this. This is Lot 81, is colored in yellow. This is the future the future parking lot that I call as a stone parcel. In this location right here, there's a 90-degree access between different driveways in the proposed parking lots on the stone parcel. So this is a logical place for the access point to get from here down to what I describe in an email as the maneuver area. And so the crossing here is an S-shaped in order to get a gradual grade, plus across this wildlife corridor is a man-made ridge that's very, very old. And I brought a photograph.
Man-made ridge. This right here. I'm familiar with the site. You got it.
And as what we're trying to do is avoid digging into the man-made ridge, because it would create an over a 10-foot cut, plus this grade would be a little too steep for the driveway, for bus access, and we've made it more gradual. Plus, we've shown you a conceptual design, and it has to go through a couple more design iterations, but it'll look something like this. And the bottom line is we brought the buses into the side of the site, so there'd be very few potential conflicts between bus movements entering and leaving the site. This site is currently disturbed. If you've been there, there's a building, but there's a big industrial type storage. There's a driveway access here that's way too steep for buses, so we're going to come and build one across. There's another construction access here. But the bottom line is, when we're done, there'll be 40% open space, and the drainage on site will be handled by collecting the runoff into vegetated bioretention swales. There'll be a first swale that'll be to collect the water and provide some opportunity for the suspended solids to drop. Then there'll be another one beyond that that'll have vegetation, and that'll be designed to leach the first inch, and then there will be subsurface leaching systems for the remainder of the storms. So the bottom line is, I believe this is an appropriate design for the connection, and I've identified on the plan the side slopes and where we cut one tip of the man-made ridge off. Is there any questions I can answer concerning the design?
Questions from the board? Anybody? Yes, Paul?
I just had a question, Mr. Chairman. How do you deal with security if this is going to be an open corridor for both the vehicles up north and the maintenance facility?
That's a good question, and the answer is that there will be fencing on the sides outside the 100-foot corridor, both for the security of the 18-acre parking lot that's to the north and the bus maintenance and storage facility to the south side of the corridor. So that driveway you see passing through the corridor will be gated, but there'll be no barrier to wildlife movement through the corridor, which is what the requirement is. I just want to mention, not responsive to your question, but this property over here, closest to where that driveway, that is owned by the town and is the site of a water tower. So this is not a site next to it that's used by another company in the park.
Other questions? I have Mr. McGrath. So the topography there shows that there's a big hill there in that wildlife corridor. Am I reading that right?
Yes.
Okay, so you're going to go around that hill, sort of, as best you can.
Yes.
Right, okay. So you won't be filling in anything, you're going to be excavating, taking material out of that corridor to put that driveway in?
The driveway is, there is a cut in here and a very shallow fill there, so the grade here, the proposed grade's 114, the ground's 112. The grade here is 112, and it's 120 there, and it's, I can't read, it's like 114 there. So we tried to make it as blended as possible.
You sort of followed the contour of the hill,
I tried, yes.
but then you have fill on the other side, on that side, right?
This is
Yeah,
cut.
that'll be
This is a
filled.
very slight fill.
Yeah,
No,
okay.
this is a cut, and this is a very slight
Oh,
fill.
that's there's two hills there then, okay, I
There's
see.
a cut here and a cut here,
I
yes.
see, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And there'll be fencing along the corridor on both sides, and it'll be gated at the driveway.
Yes.
Okay. And is that a driveway that's capable of handling two buses passing each other at the same time?
Yes.
And for Mr. Ahmet, you said the site plan review was for the, previous site plan review was for all of the yellow area?
Yes, in 2000, the present owner of the property and the applicant then was Mr. Cuniff, whose trust owns the property, constructed the existing 5,000 square foot building. So that required site plan review, so the property was subject to a site plan review. The nice thing about this property, one is that the building, without addition to it, will work very well as the maintenance facility.
So you don't envision another structure on that property at this time?
Well, there will be some other uses. They're shown on the plan. Right now, there are no plans to put another building. There are structures, but they're not buildings. Is that right?
Right. So you don't anticipate another site plan review on that property, even as you go forward with the Steamship Authority use of that
Well,
property?
because the Steamship Authority has an exemption as a state authority, a public instrumentality.
got it.
That's why you
Yeah.
haven't seen the state.
Okay, that's right. Yeah,
For instance,
okay.
you, I'm sure, didn't review in a formal setting
Right.
the large parking lot above.
Right.
So we're in a situation where the plan shows a wildlife corridor, and we just wanted to be sure that what we're going to do with respect to that wildlife corridor, because the property is not something the authority would buy, and want to make sure that the town is okay with that. We're showing you preliminary site design so you see what's going on, but it's not for the purpose of a formal site plan review or modification
Okay.
of it.
And then you said the access to that property will be off of St. Jean Road or whatever it is until the other property is developed, and then the buses will be entering through the parking lot into this. Is
That's
that-
correct.
Okay.
The Steamship Authority will take title to the 18 acres to the north sometime in the coming year or into 2014 pursuant to their agreement with Stone. Once they acquire title, they'll be able to develop the driveway connection and perhaps even before the parking is finished. So we have a deadline on the agreement with the EDIC that's been accepted by the Cape Cod Commission, and that is, I believe it's May 1 of 2016. We will stop using Bernard E. St. Jean Drive for any bus traffic, and so during the interim, there will be some buses on the Tech Park Road. Now, of course, the Tech Park Road is designed for industrial use and large trucks and so on, and the traffic actually isn't that great because the buses go out in the morning, they're out all day, they come back. There's one change of shift only in the peak time of the year. But once the property to the north is available, then the cars will enter the parking lot property opposite the new Falmouth Youth Hockey League rink and go through the Steamship Authority property to access this property. And the road within the Tech Park, as we think of it, will then only be used by passenger vehicles or people who are coming to work there or have a reason to visit there. Not ferry passenger, but workers. There are some vans and pickup trucks that the authority uses that would access the property that way as well.
And could you tell me what we're looking at here with this photograph?
Not nearly as well as Mr. McGrath
Okay,
can, so I'm going to
I'll accept Mr. McGrath's explanation.
When we took the picture, the individual that took the picture was standing somewhere around this. So you're looking at the man-made ridge, and there's different kind of storage at the base of the man-made.
Okay. Thank you. Further questions from Ms. Paul?
Is that man-made ridge trash?
Oh, no, it's full of stones. That, in the 60s, there was a golf course that was partially constructed on the, basically the EDIC land.
So the trash
and they
shown here
went
is
back-
just storage in front of the ridge?
Yeah, the
Okay,
storage
thank
in
you.
front. That ridge is all stones. all different size stones and some fill mixed in, but there's also some trees grown on it.
Other questions? Rich?
Yes, Mr. Ahmed, I question your assertion that anybody could do this across the wildlife corridor, but I don't doubt that your assertion that the Steamship Authority has the right to do it. So I think we could go forward on that basis, and it would be very appreciated if we would do that on the basis of the covenant.
On the basis of a what?
Covenant.
Oh, covenant, yes, I thought they said they were drafting one.
You know, the Steamship Authority doesn't regularly or even often come before town boards like the planning board. But from working with the Steamship Authority for the years, they are very concerned about the relationship with the town, and they have enough problems to deal with without making new ones. This is a good project because it gets this bus facility really out of an area where it might not be as opportune, and really in a great location right next to its main, what will be, other than Woods Hole, its primary parking facility during the peak season. So as soon as Chuck Martinson asked if he could, just for reassurance, that the wildlife corridor would be held intact, we thought about a way we could do that, and with that outside the regular permitting process, but by giving the town a covenant. And Steamship Authority is quite willing to do that, in part to make sure that the relationship with the town and on this important issue is a very good one, and because it really wants this site and wants to know that it can do it. And we agree that there is an exemption. We also think that the language in the zoning bylaw, if applicable, that's in the open space provisions of the bylaw under cluster subdivisions that are referred to in the wildlife corridor bylaw, refer to roadways. And the definition of roadway is not a private driveway like this. So we don't think it's prohibited, but we don't have to go there. I appreciate your conclusion that a Steamship Authority would be exempt. There was enough ambiguity, we felt we needed to get a town official, and we think it's the building commissioner, to say, okay, so we can go ahead and complete the purchase, and that's where your role is in supporting that action by the building commissioner.
Okay, I read the letter. I'm going to read one last sentence that I read before. Our hope is that the planning board will take what action is necessary to convey its support for the Steamship Authority development, such as authorizing the town planner to advise the building commissioner that the planning board does not object to the Steamship Authority's building a driveway connection as proposed, and recommending the town's acceptance of a covenant as submitted by the Steamship Authority. So, Mr. Curry, do you have any objections to our voting on that and authorizing you to advise the building commissioner that we are in favor of this or not?
I have no objections.
Okay. All right, then any further discussion on this and how you want to proceed? My recommendation is that we vote either supporting this or not, and ask the town planner to advise the building commissioner, and that we also agree to accept a covenant on behalf of the town from the Steamship Authority. Rich?
I would just want to make it clear that we are not agreeing that this is by right for anyone other than an exempt entity such as the Steamship Authority.
Okay.
Make it clear, we are not construing the bylaw to allow, willy-nilly, driveways all across, up and down the whole length of the
Okay.
wildlife.
I will anticipate.
We don't have to go there, and we should mention that we are basing this strictly on the fact that they are exempt and they are generously offering a covenant, and we think the town should accept it.
Okay. I assume that if we have a motion, it will take that into consideration. Jim, did you?
Well, I just wanted to just review, I think I heard it, but if they just tell us when this final plan is done, what are the parking lots that are being shutting down and taking out of town again? I think I remember them, but I'd like to hear it again. There was on Palmer Avenue and Gifford, and something in Bourne. Could you just run the list by us?
The Palmer Avenue parking lot will not be closed. The Falmouth lots that will be closed are on Gifford Street, and I believe there are actually two lots today, two lots on Gifford Street. And there is a lot in Katomet, and that will be closed as well. So there'll be economies in the consolidation of those parking areas and keeping the buses, out of the downtown area, getting to the Gifford Street lots.
And is that an agreement that you have with the EDIC or with the Cape Cod Commission?
No, this is
No?
just, this is in
It's a
fact
plan.
the business plan
Okay.
of the authorities.
Okay. Paul?
I'd just like to make a comment. I, for one, appreciate the fact that you're coming before the planning board, even though you don't have to. And the fact that Mr. Lamson here shows additional effort, and I think that's very well appreciated. I think the whole concept makes a lot of sense to try to consolidate this and get the buses off the road. My only concern is we're talking about 2016, and yes, we're running to get this thing done today. And I know that's an outside number, but I would hope that you're talking about completing this long before 2016.
Well, the authority can't proceed with the parking lot until it owns the property. And under its agreement with the present owner, some of the property has been acquired, including the property that the Steamship Authority then conveyed to the Youth Hockey League. But this piece has not been acquired. I think the Steamship Authority wants to proceed as quickly as possible once it owns the property. Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments? Rich, would you be willing to propose a brief motion, including what you stated earlier, so that we can vote on this?
Okay, I will wing it. I propose that.
No, wait, I need a motion.
I move that we communicate to the building commissioner our approval of the plan with findings that it will be in the best interest of the public to have this facility relocated to this site, that we do so recognizing that the crossing that wildlife corridor is permissible for the Steamship Authority because it is an exempt entity and is therefore not subject to the zoning bylaw.
And the covenant?
And we will accept a covenant on behalf of the town with respect to that driveway.
Okay. That was a short motion. Do you realize what this is like when we ask Rich to give us just a regular motion? I need a second.
I second.
Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Congratulations, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Pass that back to us.
Now I move that we go back to the regular agenda.
Need a second? Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The next item on the agenda, let me see, wait a minute. Was there any other correspondence besides that? Those two envelopes, those aren't considered as correspondence, right? Okay, okay. All right, so we're done with correspondence then, because I don't want to go back to it. Okay, the next item on the agenda, are approval not required. Do we have any of those? We have none. The next item on the agenda is a discussion. I asked that this be put on the agenda. I would like the planning board to approve a proposal that I have that the chairman, the vice chairman, and the clerk meet quarterly with the staff to do long-range planning in consideration of the next 3 months. Is any discussion? Rich?
Is this going to be a vision thing or simply a operational thing?
A vision thing? No, operational thing, I think. Well, if the staff has something that they see coming down the pipe, they could maybe talk to us about it, and then we could decide when it's going to be on the agenda, or any other items that might be of interest. I'm just trying to make things a little bit smoother from a planning point of view, short-term planning, and not entertaining anything that would be appropriate for the whole board to listen to.
This involves how we're going to be dealing with these issues.
Yeah?
Yeah, okay.
Anybody else? Okay, can I have a motion? Yes, Brian?
I just want to make sure we're all in agreement as to what purpose and why we're doing this, and make sure I manage your expectations that come from these meetings. We may be discussing, I guess we're all going to meet every 3 months now? Is that what we're doing? I said quarterly, that's every 3 months.
It's not a quorum.
I know, I was still posted as if it's a vote of the board, I would still have to post it.
Yeah, that's fine. It's like a subcommittee, really.
It would be a subcommittee, even though it's not a quorum, so the open, subject to the open meeting law.
Yep.
Okay, just making sure you understand that. We would probably not be discussing pending plans that were of regulatory nature, such as CBS or WWeb or Nickelodeon, because they would be in front of you.
Right.
And so, to manage your expectations, it wouldn't be, well, I'm meeting with the lawyers from these people, those people, they're probably going to be on the agenda. I just want to make sure that you have no problem with the board, subject to the open meeting law. And we'll talk about, what's coming up in terms of your discussions for the next 3 weeks.
Right. So I envision to discuss maybe planning when we'd be holding joint meetings with other boards, that kind of stuff. Just so that we all get it, just do a little long-range planning. Bob?
Is it really necessary to have the vice chairman and the secretary? You feel that's...
Yes. I'd rather 3 people be there rather than just myself. I can go in and do it, I can do that myself. I like more than one opinion, frankly. And let's say, for instance, something's coming along and I can't be there, then they'd be right there on top of it. The vice chairman would know about it, and I don't know. It just seems like it's a planning tool. That's all. Yes, Rich.
Yes, that was my concern, was that you folks not be getting into any substantive planning issues, such as what the direction of the town, things that should be properly heard by the entire board, as part of the planning process.
Right.
As long as it's simply putting things in order, well, we need to discuss this, we need to discuss that, and so here's how we're going to do it to make the most efficient use of the board's time. I think that would be appropriate, but...
Correct, that's my concern. You're a board of 7. And just make sure it's more organizational, it's coming up from planning perspectives. It's a subcommittee, you got to post it. But I don't want the other board members to read it in the paper. Anything of substance, you come back to all 7 members.
Many committees, boards, commissions have subcommittees in this town, and they function like that all the time. We don't happen to do that, but this would be like a subcommittee, like an executive committee, but we're not making decisions and we're not bringing forth anything other than planning on how the planning board's going to move forward and what we're going to be doing with who and that kind of thing. No.
We have certain tasks that are coming up, schedules, deadlines to meet, inform with the subcommittee. But I'm not anticipating any decision making.
Nope.
That comes back to the entire 7 members.
Absolutely.
We're just managing expectations.
And we can try it, and if it doesn't work out, we can drop it. Yes, Bob?
So would you make it a formal subcommittee then, the executive planning board subcommittee?
Oh, I don't know. We could call it a subcommittee if we wanted to. We could call it the executive committee, but I mean, I think that's a little formal.
Well, it seems once you get past the number of people that we have, it kind of formalizes it if you have to publish it as a meeting.
We have to publish it. That was the change in the recent change in the open meeting law, that if you have subcommittee, if you have people discussing anything that's going on in your committee, you have to publicize it
Right. So
and comply with the open meeting law.
So that to me crosses into the formal
Yeah, it would.
arena.
It will.
And as opposed to maybe the chairman and the planner getting together and having a discussion about future agenda items.
Yep.
or things
That's
like
true.
that.
It would be different. Not that the chairman doesn't, spend time every week either on the phone or in person talking about the upcoming agenda.
Right.
It wouldn't get in the way of that. But, I'm just thinking, I'm asking you whether or not you think it's a good idea, and if so, to approve it, that's all. And if you don't, we won't.
Ralph, is it more for long-term vision types of things, or just,
No, I think,
Everyday
maybe
business.
3 months out.
Yeah.
3 months out.
Okay.
Like we might have town meeting coming up, we might want to say, should we have a PowerPoint presentation on this, or that, or whatever? We might also talk about staff time and how the staff is going to allocate their, they make a plan. They've given us a plan about how they want to, allocate their time, and if we have somebody coming to us saying, let's say, for instance, the town manager comes and says, Mr. Curry, I would like you and your assistant to do this. I think it would be a good idea if we found out about that.
Usually do, but that's fine.
Yeah, Rich?
Yeah, I want to say, Bob, it's specifically not going to be vision, long-term or short-term. It's going to be scheduling, prioritizing,
Yeah.
allocating resources, things like that, to make the board's work more efficient. As long as that's what it is, I have no problem. I don't think we need a public hearing for that or announce a public hearing. We'll get into any talk about future visions of town needs and things like that. I think we need a public hearing for that.
Oh, yeah. This is strictly organizational type stuff. But, if we're going to do it, I need a motion to let this go forward, and then I want to vote on it. And so, how do you feel? Does anybody want to move that be the case? Doug?
I would make a motion that you guys convene and be more organized,
The chairman, the vice chairman, and the clerk?
if they're so willing.
Okay. All right, do I have a second?
Second?
Second. Discussion.
Yeah, I was going to second it, but I have no action right on this one way or another. So if
Okay.
you want to do it, be my guest, so I'll vote for it.
All right. Any other discussion? Paul?
I would just suggest that it is a brief report of those meetings to the full board.
Oh, yeah,
Oh, yes.
absolutely. In fact, you have to take minutes,
You didn't
so
say
we'll
that.
just give you minutes. We'll give you
didn't say that.
copies of the minutes. Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Maybe we start in January, maybe, Brian, something like that? Yeah. Okay. Next item on the agenda. Wind Energy System Bylaw.
Chair, I'd like to make a point of order before we begin.
Go ahead.
I notice that there is a considerable number of members of the public here who I presume are here for this discussion. I would make it very clear that this is a discussion, it's not a hearing. We are here to discuss amongst ourselves and not to take information. Because if it were going to be taking information, then it should be noticed, because I would believe there are people in the public who would want to attend, who aren't here, perhaps with different points of view. So I would make that a point of order that we proceed on that basis.
Okay, Rich, you just saved me some time. That's what I was going to say.
Thank you.
Before we move forward, I want to just take 1 minute to review what we've done up to this point. The last time we met, we voted. I asked every member to bring 3 items that they would like to reconsider in the bylaw. We had accessory use, 51%. We had all 7 members. We've discussed that and settled that issue. We had exemptions in the bylaw, 300 watts, and et cetera. 6 of us voted as that being an issue to review, and we have dealt with that. The next item was the meteorological towers. 4 of us felt that that was necessary to reconsider and review and readdress, and we have dealt with that. We now have the last 2 that received votes, plus some other issues. The next item was sound. 2 people felt that was necessary to revisit, and that will be our first, the first item in our bylaw that we will address tonight. Doug suggested that we review the sound portion of the model amendment developed by the Massachusetts Department of Energy Resources, which is on page 7, which is on page 7, right. 3.9.4 sound. I also received a letter from a citizen concerning, with suggestions, and it was addressed to myself and Mr. Curry and Ms. McCollum. And I don't know if I have a copy of that. I think I do somewhere. But I will bring that up later under my comments. So at this point, and I would like to remind the planning board to please state the page and the paragraph that you're referring to when we address this this part of the wind turbine bylaw. I believe we are on page, we can start on page 6. We've all received an amended draft provided by the staff, incorporating the decisions that we made at our last meeting, and we are now on the the December 6th draft, page 6, criteria for review, setbacks, B, sound setbacks. Open for discussion. Doug, since you suggested that we review this before we discuss tonight, would you like to start?
Yeah, I just was wondering if the board would think that we should incorporate any of the model bylaw information with regard to sound. They're very descriptive of, how that measurement will be taken from the property line in any building, and it gives a description of how the measurements will be taken, and the fact that it should be in line with the Department of Environmental Protection's Division of Air Quality Noise Regulations. We don't specify anything in our bylaw so far, and I just feel like maybe we should be referring to some type of entity that will be, they're the ones that are going to be controlling these regulations anyway. But it just seemed like maybe we should mention that. And also, in addition to the sound, later on, there's a lot of other stuff in here that might be relevant for us to reference, whether or not we copy it all out. I know we're concerned with keeping this short, and that was one of our concerns at town meeting, that maybe it was so long that people were baffled by it. But the model amendment is quite a bit longer. So, these things, there's a lot of information, so it's It's really impossible to keep it short.
I may have jumped the gun here a little bit. I believe we asked Mr. Curry if he could give us any additional information on this issue before tonight, so that we could discuss it tonight. And Mr. Curry, did you have something that you wanted to add to our discussion?
You go on your own. But I wasn't ready to address that tonight, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
But if the board wants to speak to it, I'll be happy to address it.
Okay.
I thought perhaps the best way to approach your tasks would be to simply start out addressing the issues that town meeting brought up for your attention. And that's my recommendation to the board. Before you start changing things that town meeting didn't recognize as an issue, it's my recommendation to the board for very sound town meeting reasons. And I'd be happy to talk about some of the background research the staff has been performing for you in regards to other sound alternatives that you do not consider. But if the board simply wants to talk about sound tonight,
Rich?
I agree with Brian. I don't think we should be fooling around with that. For example, I mean, I could have said, if I wanted to get into something like that, let's look at this safety setback. I mean, I think before we go imposing safety setback regulations based on what are basically arbitrary standards, we should at least know what the risks are. I would dare say that if we were to look at statistically the risk of ice throw and mechanical failure causing any serious danger to anyone, I think we would be much better off simply requiring insurance, and the people who are putting these in would easily be able to afford insurance, because I dare say the risk of those things are very low statistically. Therefore, but I'm not going to say that. I went along with this because I think we need to get a workable bylaw through it. So I said, fine, let's just leave that the way it is. And I say the same thing about the sound setback. Just leave it the way it is. It wasn't an issue really at town meeting. We should not make it an issue.
so my recommendation right now is just let me at least go through the draft dated December the 6th, show you the board and the public the changes that have been made. Get your concurrence on this, because those are the issues you're asking to look at first. And then tackle the new issues. Let's get to the issues of town meeting out of the way. If you'd like to, I can go through those changes now.
Okay. I went through them myself because I have electronic copy, and I'm not sure that everybody else did, and so that could be an oversight on my part. I went through and compared them all and highlighted them actually. I understand. So we did, like I said, we did accessory use first, which was showed up in two. Let's see. It's in under definitions for sure, which is on page 3.
So with your permission, Rob,
Yeah.
let's go through each change, and we'll get to those definitional changes that the board asked me to take a look at. But I think it's important that we at least start out with page 1.
Well, you want to do it by page rather than by issue.
I think that would be helpful, then you can see holistically. Address the issues that town meeting asked you to address. Here are those issues first. And we're going to tackle some new issues. And some recommendations to the board if you really want to bring other issues to attention. But I'd like to at least go through the changes that staff did for you on behalf of the discussion staff.
Okay, but that's fine. But I would like to say, as town meeting member, I don't believe that the only input that I have received regarding this bylaw was received at town meeting. There are some people in town meeting who are very, much more comfortable speaking in large groups and much more involved. But there were a lot of people that spoke at precinct meetings, and that's an extension of town meeting. And I don't feel as though just the comments that were made at town meeting are the ones that need to be entertained here. And that's why I believe that even though only 2 people out of 7 here felt as though sound was an issue, because they were asked to provide 3, and most of us went the first 3, but other people felt as though sound still was a significant issue. So I just want to make sure that that's the way, that this board understands that that's the way I feel about this bylaw and as a town meeting member.
Hear me out. I can only function the way the board looks. And so right now, the board asks us to look at certain things, put it to your discussion. I simply want to address what the board asked me to address here at this public forum. And we can have a discussion about whether precinct discussions or pre-precinct discussions the same way as discussions at the entire town meeting, but I would at least like to report to the board what we've done on your behalf for the changes you see in the agenda.
Right.
That's all I want to do.
That's fine, and on our last meeting, we talked rather specifically about language, although I do believe that we asked you to develop some language for approval tonight, and so that's well put, and I certainly understand your position. Rich?
Yes. We presented this language here in section 240-166H criteria, section 2B. We presented that to town meeting.
What is that? What is that particular
That
area?
is the sound setback.
Yeah. Well, wait a minute, Rich, let me interrupt you. Mr. Curry has asked us to go through it page by page. Would you be willing to wait until we got to that page to discuss sound setbacks?
Sure.
Okay, good. All right, then.
Yeah,
Bob?
I'd like to go through page by page, because there are some things that we could revisit, like the Met Towers and some exceptions that are on other pages. So rather than skipping around all over the place, I would rather just go page by page.
Okay. All right, then why don't we do that, Mr. Curry?
Okay, let's do that.
Okay.
Look at paragraph number 3 where it says insert the following sections. And you'll see under business districts, you have a change for it. Because we missed it at the first town meeting. You only want in business districts, wind energy systems, you only want them in business 2 districts. So we made that change. And the original bylaw said section 240-A51A12. You'll see now it says business districts, section 240-51C5, because that's business 2 districts only. And I'll add language to another draft that specifically states that. So that was a technical error. I missed it. Unfortunately, I picked it up.
Okay.
We made that change. I've also, in paragraph 4, it says delete.
Mm-hmm.
In the entirety, I've deleted sections 240-166A through E because the town clerk was a little bit confused because there is a preceding paragraph prior to sections A through E that would have remained. So that was another pickup made by the town clerk. So those are 2 little technical changes on page 1 for your attention.
Okay.
That was staff made.
Right.
Then on page 2, under wind energy systems allowed with limitations, because the board discussed this at your last meeting, you can see under paragraph 3, wind energy systems may only be permitted when accessory to a principal land use.
Right.
You don't require the operational details. It simply opens it up to, you have to be accessory use, pursuant to the board's discussion.
Mr. Chairman,
There are no,
this is just a little has nothing substantive to do. I think the commas that you have around constructed are unnecessary and are confusing.
The commas that you have around what?
The word constructed at the bottom of page 1. I think you should strike those commas.
Yeah, okay, those should be, all right, that's a typo,
Wind
okay.
energy system shall only be...
Constructed or modified.
Shall only be constructed or modified through special permit.
Okay, all right.
Those commas are-
All right, that's fine, okay.
And you also see, we made some formatting, simply a formatting change. Now you'll have section, A is the purpose, B, what's allowed, C, what's prohibited, and then D will be the exceptions. We switch exceptions with definitions, so it flows in this better. You can see pursuant to your discussions, we deleted the exemption for any wind energy system with a rated capacity of 300 watts or less. And then that would simply indicate that there are no exceptions. We added some language with regards to any wind energy system in existence can relocate. To take that off the table, modify it, otherwise make improvements consistent with this article. To take off the table those issues raised by the board. We've also, on page 3, then made those changes to the definition of an accessory use. And you'll see that we've eliminated the 51%. We've added Richard's language, which is incidental to and supplement the parties of a principal use or uses, depending if there's more than one. We've added the language, I think it was Paul's suggestion or Bob's suggestion with regards to whether located on the same lot or held in common, as suggested autonomy as part of a planned residential development. And we footnoted planned residential development to give the correct citation of the zoning bylaws so people will understand.
Okay, Pat?
Mr. Chairman, through you. I'm wondering if, because we've added the PRD in here, if we should put a clause in there that further modifies that, provided that all setbacks can be met to the nearest home, especially the 3 times maximum tip height, which is indicated in the state model bylaw for safety. It's a question I'm asking.
Let me answer it.
Okay.
This is your definition section. And in your definition sections, you're simply trying to define what it is you're talking about. Your regulatory sections, your criteria for review, your performance standards, it would hold.
Okay.
Even if we're a common open space PRD, those decision criteria would be the same for a lot of them.
Thank you.
Under net metering, the definition we took out to be small. Middle of the definition should apply to all wind energy systems. It's amazing how you look at this thing dozens of times, put it in front of town meeting, and these things, after town meeting, you're staring at it, and I missed it. Change the definition of small wind energy system. You delete the .3, so it's just anything less than 60 kilowatts. Page 4 is the same. And on page 5, you'll see the engineering detail. We made that change to be consistent with the definition that we deleted the application requirements for actual power consumption over 2 years for the principal uses on the lot. And then for the Met Tower issue, we have language that for large wind energy systems, you can, so you So for small wind energy systems, you don't get it. But for large wind energy systems, it's met power there or the equivalent available data. And I think that was passed, which had some language in, that we looked at, what we thought passed was it did the same thing. So that's what we have here for your discussion tonight on that. And then the design standards, Richard very adroitly picked up on the color and finish, that we are unconcerned about interior color, and stuff we would pick up here.
What page is that?
That's on page 6, on the color and finish.
I see it.
Of course, we're concerned about exterior color. Then on the last page, on page 8, you can delete it. That last sentence regarding complaints. It was confusing people. But what happens if not that? Then it goes to the regular section, 8, complaint-driven issues with the building commissioner. 7, paragraph 7 will simply be, you have to have a responsible person identified. The public wants to contact that person, fine, but as long as there's a system is in place, otherwise they come to the time. At least there's an opportunity, if in the middle of the night something's going on, something's going wrong, the building department's closed, there's a phone number for a resident to call, hopefully get somebody on the line, if something's up that we take care of, otherwise it's a public police action. So those are the changes that we made for you so far. That address, I believe, the discussion that occurred at town meeting. It's on the transcript, it's on the record, that I believe identified the issues. They identified and then offered language that attempts to address the issues that town meeting discussed with you. So that's what we did first. Address the issues that town meeting said address. Hopefully the board can at least come to a consensus and a vote on those issues before you open up new issues. I know there are several new issues. Let's take this forward. That's my guidance.
Okay, I was actually going to do it differently. I was going to go through the whole thing and then come back to you. But anyway, that's fine. We got, now, the way we should proceed now is talk about just the changes that have been made and that Brian has just talked about. And let's take them in order by page, just like we've gone through it. And if there's if you've got any comments about any of the changes that are made on page 1, speak now.
Typographical errors have been indicated.
Typographical errors were noted. Okay. Okay. On page 2, there were some changes made. Comments on changes that have been made, that have been discussed before and made so far. Bob, excuse me.
One of the comments that we heard both at the district meetings, the precinct meetings and town meeting was the farm exemption. And I don't know if that should be added to section D there under exceptions, that there's some wording that Brian had given me the name of C61A lands should be the only ones that would qualify under that. So people don't get the idea that because they're growing rutabagas in the backyard that they're exempt and they're in an agriculturally zoned neighborhood. That there is an exemption for state-recognized lands that are farmlands.
Okay, Brian?
See the footnote at the bottom of page 2? It says, see section 3 of chapter 48, general law for agricultural, religious, and educational exemptions. And that's the section that came up at town meeting. It's not just.
Okay.
If you can demonstrate that you qualify under the educational exemption, such as personal research, if in fact there's a religious exemption, the It's in there because the state, that section of the law allows for it. And there is an agricultural exemption. And the agricultural exemption is not just Chapter 61A limits. The agricultural exemption that what the gentleman at town meeting was referring to is defined under that section 3. And it's really very, very broad. And there's really nothing this board can do to change that because it's the general statute. If it were just 61A lands, then you have to have that exemption, you have to have that designation, that tax status. But if I'm growing cranberries on more than 2 acres in an agriculturally zoned fountain, I can claim the exemption. That's what I want to understand.
Okay.
When I saw this, I couldn't, I saw the footnote, but I couldn't find where that was footnoted from.
Right, I think that might be missing.
Okay.
No, it's up here.
Would that be under, right after
Right at the
the
very
word
first
exemptions?
line.
Oh,
At the very
okay.
first line,
Okay,
at the top, after SPGA.
okay.
Where?
Right after SPGA.
Okay.
Oh, way up at the top.
Okay, it's,
Oh, it's up
yeah.
there
Okay,
versus
cleared that up.
with limitations. Okay, it's way up at the top, yeah. Yes, Pat?
Comment.
I'm wondering whether, under exceptions, where we are looking at allowing alteration, modification, relocation, et cetera, if we should add a modification to that during its useful life. The reason I'm saying that is, I don't know whether, right towards the end, an alteration may be done to it that will keep it kind of limping along, or whether we want to allow that. I'm throwing that out for discussion to the board, whether that would be a useful modification to make. Normally, the turbines are estimated to have a useful life of 20 years. I don't know what might make it longer. And we also have read that as they age, noise increases, vibration increases, all kinds of problems increase. And so I'm throwing this out for discussion.
Nuclear plants usually have design life of 20 years, but
They
we
sure
see
do.
it being renewed and renewed and renewed, and with far greater potential risk of harm. I think we should just, leave it as it is, not get into that. I do want to make a comment here, a question to Brian. Educational exemption. Does that mean that if I wanted to get some money from big manufacturer investor to open up a training school for wind turbine technicians and operators, I couldn't do that? I said, no.
The educational exemption is for not-for-profits. You have to demonstrate that it advances your educational mission.
Okay.
Other comments?
And that's true.
On page 2.
So I just want, we turn to the agricultural exemption. I'm sure everyone knows and understand it's, if I'm haying a field or I'm growing cranberries, and I can demonstrate an agricultural use, you have the agricultural exemption. Okay?
Okay.
So you're saying they would be exempt, they would be exempt from this bylaw?
Should that footnote go under exemptions, though?
Yeah. Well, he's got the footnote up at the very top.
I'll make sure that, I'll look at that.
Maybe you could move it down
Yeah,
under
it-
exemptions, the footnote.
It just wasn't very clear to me.
Yeah, okay, all right. Is everybody happy with page 2?
Very happy.
One last question.
Static.
Yes, Doug?
So, Mr. Perry, then, how does that exemption relate to this language that we thought was all-inclusive, where it said, all provisions or requirement of this chapter to the contrary notwithstanding? How does that escape that language?
It was brought up as an issue at town meeting that there is an agricultural exemption to state statute that we didn't address. So we're addressing it here in this version. And it's clear that see section 3 of chapter 48. People know you can go to the building commissioner and claim that exemption. Even though it's automatic, we made it clear in the bylaw that notwithstanding, you can ask for that exemption.
So is it then possible that there may be others in other state statutes that we're just not aware of? Like maybe a fishing exemption? Not to say that that would be one, but...
It is. Aquaculture is recognized as an agricultural pursuit in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
The key here, the key language in this language at the bottom of page 1, it says, any provision of the requirements of this chapter, that means this, the
Yeah.
zoning bylaw
Right.
as a whole. But that doesn't say that we're not bound by state law. Again, the law is always will supersede.
The issue of
But
family was...
this is good language to have in there, just in case there's some obscure little portion of our imperfect bylaws that somebody could use to one hole in with, but we have that in there.
Okay.
All right, any more comments on page 2? I had one. I remember some comments about, under wind energy systems prohibited, number 1, there were some comments about having less wattage allowed in residential areas. And I don't remember if anybody else had that down or not.
Small turbines
Yeah.
are only allowed, so the large turbines
Yeah,
are only
allowed
allowed.
it. Right, I understand that. Yeah. Okay. All right, I'm going to skip over that. Page 3. Up the top, we got into the definition of accessory land use, and then, let's see. And then the, under net metering, we knocked out the word small. Yeah, Paul, Jim?
On the accessory use side, it was brought up at town meeting that and I agreed with it, it's one of the reasons why I was set for the change, that there were other areas in the bylaw that could take care of it, and that's where sound came in. I was all set to drop the accessory use as long as we took a hard look at the sound portion. So I just don't want to gloss over that fact that it wasn't related. I'm all set with the language here, but it was in contention of making sure we looked at other areas of the bylaw that could protect us.
Mr. Chair, that's apples and oranges.
Yeah, okay, all right, Rich, just a minute. Yeah, okay. Anybody else down here? Yes, Jim?
In fact, Richard was the one that made the point that there were other areas of the bylaw that made it unnecessary, that the sound restrictions and setbacks could take care of it. And I agreed with him on that, and that's why I went along with this.
And I was talking about the sound restrictions that we adopted, and that nobody had any problem with at town meeting, that we certainly didn't have any problem with.
Okay.
It's apples and oranges.
Anything else on page 3?
We're not, excuse me, I want to make a point. We're not out to prevent people from building this. We're simply out by putting unnecessary restrictions. That the sound level, we are going to regulate the sound level. How much...
Wait a minute, Rich, sound is coming in another couple pages. I don't want to talk about sound,
Okay.
okay? I want to talk about what's on page 3. All right. Net metering, Brian struck the word small in the middle of that paragraph. And then at the bottom, under the definition of small wind energy systems, we dropped between 0.3 and just said equal to or less than 60 kilowatts. Anybody have comments on page 3? No. Okay. Page 4, there were no changes. Page 5, up at the top, we dropped line C, and on line D, we made that met tower requirement for large wind systems only.
Can we,
And then met tower data or equivalent available data. Yes,
Yeah, I'd like to revisit that, because what was the purpose for requiring the Met Tower? What was that going to do for us? Did that have anything to do with the 51%?
Yeah, I think it did, but, and, you know, it's,
Because that was...
there is a reference to Met Tower in the model bylaw that produced by Massachusetts Department of Energy Resources, but it's not, but it doesn't say that it's required.
Yeah.
I didn't read that it was required. It just says it defined what they were and that they could be used, but it didn't make it a requirement.
Because as I recall, we discussed this, and I think I was the one that said I think we should keep it in for the larger ones, but I'm wondering if that is even necessary.
Right. Rich?
Yeah, as long as the installation can meet the setback and height requirements, the sound requirements that we deem to be reasonable, the amount of energy that they could be capable of producing, the more the better. The more the better, because, that means people will invest in them. And if they can't meet those height requirements, setback requirements, if they can't meet them, then it's irrelevant how much power that's going to be put out, because that's going to be the controlling factor. So, I mean, I think it's interesting that we have that. I don't see if there's somebody who, if they don't want to give us 12 months of Met Tower data, they can just come up and say, well, this is how we typically expect this to operate, this is what we'll be putting out, and then let's go from there. I mean, that's fine. I mean, it's always good to have more information than less information, as long as we don't use that as a stumbling block, an administrative stumbling block. That makes sense. These would have to be renumbered, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's just formatting. Pat, I remember you making a comment about whether or not we could drop the Met Tower thing completely.
Okay.
Do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, the reason that we might want to keep it in is that we may wish to be assured that there is sufficient wind to generate the power. It is conceivable that somebody who wants to put up a turbine might simply not think about that. So, they may be in a place where they think there's enough wind, but unless we put that requirement in, it may turn out that, oops, at certain times of the year, it's completely dead, and then we've got this thing sitting there that doesn't do anything and might be abandoned. Unless we put that in sort of as a jogging requirement for the larger ones.
Paul?
I think the reason for the Met Tower data is...
Excuse me, can you get the mic down to where you are?
I believe the reason for the Met Tower data is to determine the size and height of the unit. And someone who's proposing it has a very large investment, and they're going to do that to determine what size turbine they need. So I'm not sure we have to have that particular data, because we're not going to be checking what they're doing. It's their major investment, and if they don't think there's enough wind power there, they're certainly not going to invest in that. So I wonder how important it is for us to know the wind tower data over a period of 12 months.
Other comments? You,
Yeah,
Pat?
I would say I'm not going to get exercised about it. I do know that the Woods Hole Research did have a tower up for a considerable amount of time to see whether in fact there was sufficient wind there to justify their putting a turbine up. It seems the logical sort of thing to do for somebody who's going to invest that kind of money in it. The question here then is, do we wish to protect some people who might not think that it is and might find out, much to their sorrow, that they should have done it? Or do we just simply take it out and say, okay, fine, if you've forgotten certain things, then that's your problem? And as I said, I'm not going to get exercised about it one way or the other.
Our definition of Met Tower is a temporary tower equipped with devices to measure wind, speed, and direction used to determine how much wind power a site can be expected to generate. We don't get any more specific than that. We don't say how big it is, or where it has to be, where it has to be placed in relation to, obviously, it's got to be at the site where they're going to put it. But, maybe there'll be little tiny devices that they can put up on a flagpole or something, and that it won't be terribly expensive. We don't get very specific about our definition of a Met Tower. So, there's always the argument out there about that driving the cost up of putting one in, or considering about putting
And
one
land
in,
projects as well.
So, I just wanted to read the definition. Yeah, Rich?
This is the way we do it. Met tower data or equivalent available data, and let the applicant decide. Pat says, makes a good point. It's good for us to know what's out there, and it's also good for the applicant to do their homework.
Mm-hmm.
It helps them do their homework. It may sound like being a nanny, but, that's got to do people a favor.
Other comments on the Met Tower thing? All right, then you want to...
So we want to leave it as it
I
is.
assume we're going to leave it there unless I hear a motion to take it out. Okay, we'll leave it in. Page 6. We are now, let's see, wait a minute. Page 6, well, we're going to wait to discuss sound. Were there any other, oh, yes, there was, you took out the word, under 4A, we took out the word exterior in front of color. I think that was the only change on that page. Page 7, no changes. Page 8, we struck the line that said complaints that cannot be resolved by parties shall be forwarded to the building commissioner. Pat?
The comment that I heard at town meeting is that there was not enough definition under public inquiries and complaints, because the response that too many people have gotten on complaints is that it seems to drop into a deep, dark hole and gets no place. So if the only thing we have in there is that the applicant shall identify a responsible person, and that's the only place that the complaint goes, I think it's an open invitation for something to happen. I think that the complaint needs to also be copied, I would say, to the SPGA, and there's another reason for doing that, is one of the reasons that we wanted to keep any permitting here with the planning board is so that we would be aware of what the problems might be.
Okay, on page 6, under design standards, C, a wind energy system shall not display any permanent or temporary signs, writing, symbols, logos, or other graphic representation, except the following: signs necessary to identify the owner, provide 24-hour emergency contact phone number, warn of any danger. Is that covering what we're talking about? Is that enough? No.
No.
Okay.
I think complaints also should be forwarded to this board for follow-up.
Okay. Yeah, somebody else? Paul?
I don't think that's sufficient. I think by identifying the party who owns it, that is the black hole. I think you need to copy someone in the town so they know what is going on. It doesn't necessarily have to be this group, because this group permits it. There is a building commissioner who is responsible for these buildings, and I think he, as a minimum, should be copied on this so that the town knows that there is a complaint. Otherwise, there's no way of knowing if there's a complaint.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so the sentence that was struck, you're talking about reinstating that. Yes, Rich?
To the plan. I have a neighbor who has put a garage too close to my property line. It's blocking my center. Where do I go? Do I go to anybody in the town?
You could, you could approach your neighbor, you know.
No, I mean, what procedure is there within the town
Enforcement officer.
for addressing those?
If it's a structure that you think is too close to a setback, then you would go to the village.
Okay, this would be no different.
This paragraph 7 is a number there, so you can call your neighbor if there's a complaint. The other sections, if you want to take official action, obviously, with the town. You would go to that other section, file a complaint with the building commissioner, and then the process is forward.
That process is set out in our bylaw. Can we just refer to that process here?
Right, but this paragraph
Like
is...
any other zoning, like any other zoning issue.
Right, but I think the sense of the board, getting the board is you want to have at least somewhere up there, a phone number if it's the middle of the night,
Oh, yeah.
or there's a complaint, or there's an inquiry, if there's a question. And it's not just complaints, these are questions or inquiries, what's going on, what's down for maintenance. I've seen a lot of activity up there, continuing happening. There's someone you can call at the company who hopefully will give you an answer. The town may not even know what's going on up there, unless it's permit driven. If there is a formal, if there is a complaint you want to know, then, yeah, we can, the sentence says it's complaints that cannot be resolved. Well, we want to get rid of that. So if there's an inquiry or especially a complaint, a copy should come to the town, to the village. My sense is that's what the board is getting.
And the proceeding, because people had a question about the proceeding should be just as it would be with any other complaint of a zoning issue.
Right, that's another section.
And we can refer to that section so that there's no question that this is going to be handled just like any other zoning complaint. Because that's what it is.
Okay.
So Brian, why did we strike that then?
It was simply very, a lot of confusion about, well, okay, what happens, complaints that can't be resolved.
You mean at our last meeting?
In that town meeting, last meeting, so we were offering that there were two public inquiries. Maybe I'll find a different word than complaints, but I'll work on that a little bit. Is that we want to be able to have someone who's identified as that responsible person. If there is something that can be easily resolved at that level. Here's the phone number, here's the person, or there's an inquiry or complaint, and a copy should come then to the town in some fashion. If something goes beyond inquiry and complaint, then it's a formal demand. That's another process, another section.
Okay, now, at our last meeting, the complaint paragraph was brought up by one person, I believe it was Pat.
Yeah.
And so we hadn't discussed complaints at our last meeting, so I'm trying to understand how this was stricken.
We didn't discuss it.
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. But it doesn't matter, but, I mean, it was struck, probably because you, Brian, felt as though we had discussed it and we didn't want it there anymore?
Yeah,
Okay,
if I'm mistaken, I'll put it back in.
Well, it sounds like, everybody wants it back in. Yeah, I'm trying to just figure out why it was struck, because I know you put lines through the things that have been,
I have it in my notes, but
Okay.
if I'm wrong, if I made a mistake,
no, okay, because we did not discuss complaints last time.
We're not.
It was the last priority, yes, Rich?
Yes, I think that language should go back in, but then it should also have one other brief sentence, is that matters brought to the attention, complaints brought to the attention of the building commissioner will be handled under procedures and cross-reference to bylaw, so that then, because that was one question that people had, what do we do with that? Without telling, that's what you do.
I don't think we should be
arbitrary.
Okay. All right, so then how do we all feel about that? Did you hear what Rich said, that he wanted to add some language to that sentence, cross-referencing the procedure that you would, referencing a procedure in another bylaw, right? Not in this bylaw?
Or,
I define it as-
you want to cross-reference because there was some confusion. Maybe that's where I have in my notes. And I'll put that into the next.
Okay. Yes, Doug?
I'd like to stay on top of this, as we're going to be the permit granting authority, and I don't know if the typical process is always working. I know there's a lot of workload down there, and I don't see why it would be...
Down where, in the
Down
building
in the
commission or
building
something? Yeah.
department, You know, and he's responsible for a wide variety of things, including complaints and enforcement.
Violations, yeah.
And I don't know why it would be bad for us to be aware of those status.
Where it's included here.
Going to-
It is included, but the conversation we're having right now is, Rich is suggesting that it be handled in a typical fashion. I don't agree with that. I think that it would be good for us to remain in the loop of communication.
My suggestion is we keep that language in there that keeps us in the loop,
Okay.
and then just add the complaints that cannot be resolved and that go to the building commissioner will be handled according to the normal procedure for handling zoning complaints. Meanwhile, I would also think about, although we don't have to do this right now, some language that the special permit granting authority may, after the building commissioner makes his decision, revisit the permit and require modifications. I don't know if we can do that legally, but that's something that, we can't do that legally, okay.
I think
That's a can of worms.
the fact that we be aware of any issues that are going on.
What we could do is the special permit granting authority shall, at the request of the applicant, revisit the permit
I don't think it's their responsibility
modification.
to enforce.
No.
No, if they want to modify it to comply with what the building commissioner says, then we should be required to revisit. No? Okay.
Well, if we as a special permit granting authority set out certain conditions, like we do in all our decisions, and one of those conditions is being violated, doesn't it come back to us?
Once it leaves SPGA world, it enters the world of enforcement.
Yeah.
And the zoning board.
That's not
Okay.
us.
That's not us.
Okay,
But we-
that's a good deal.
But it would still behoove us to know about it, so.
Yeah,
that we
we'll know
can
about it.
Impart
Right.
our
Okay.
feelings towards the subject.
All right, I think we've decided that we want that sentence back in there, and then Brian might add a little additional wording about a cross-reference.
Cross-reference. The first sentence should have a copy to the building, a copy to the building. That's the first one. And then I'll reinstate the second line, my mistake.
Okay.
Cross-reference with a cross-reference, so people, the public, know that it enters enforcement.
Okay. Yeah, Rich, make it short.
Yeah, my concern here is this. There's a complaint. There is a violation of the sound setback requirement. The building commissioner determines that it is that it is so. So now, what is the enforcement action that is taken? Well, you shut it down. Well, okay, he shuts it down.
Not us.
Now, I would think at that point, the applicant should be able to come back to us and say, this equipment was found to be in violation, I can install other equipment, I need a modification that will allow me to install this other equipment.
We always do comply.
Yeah,
Okay, that's all I'm talking
you can reapply.
Always do,
about, that will perform better.
always do.
Okay.
Paul?
Can't drag them.
The sentence that was struck says complaints that cannot be resolved. I think there's some information needed before you get to that point, just by providing a notice to the operator that there's a problem, is a black hole. So I think a copy has to be sent to someone in town. And then you have an issue of if it is not resolved. So there's, I think, a stepwise fashion there. You have to know about it, and if it's not resolved, then you have to do something about it. But by putting back the same sentence, you miss that intermediate step of even knowing there's a problem.
So you want to strike, you want it to read, complaints shall be forwarded to the building inspector, commissioner, and you don't want to put anything in there about whether or not the parties resolve it amongst themselves or not. Is that what you're saying?
No, I think you have to know about it first. and then there's a process.
Who needs to know about it?
Someone in town needs to know that there is a complaint, because the way this reads now, you notify an operator, and that's a black hole. He doesn't have to tell you, he doesn't have to do anything about it.
Yeah.
To address that, Paul, at the end of the first sentence, I'm going to put some language copied to the building commission.
That's fine.
Okay.
Then
No, the comment I heard was adding the sentence back in, and I think it has to be reworked.
I'll come up with some language with that intermediate phase that you suggested, be a copy to the building commissioner, or copy to, we can stay in that, but then, that's phase one, and if it can't be resolved, it goes to sentence.
Brian, we trust you. It's okay.
Yeah.
I'm taking things out of special permission, I'm using it.
Mr. Chair, my
Yeah.
neighbor has a turbine, and it's been working fine, I have no problems. Then I notice he's got a certain time of year, I'm getting unwarranted flicker, and it's bothering me. Now, whether it would bother me or not is irrelevant, but it's bothering me. So I go to my neighbor and I say, gee, this flicker is really kind of bothering me. And my neighbor says, oh, I'm sorry, Rich, why don't I'll shut it off. You tell me the times that it's a problem, I'll shut it off. Okay. So at that point, what's my issue with the neighbor? What's the issue? What is there to bring to the building commissioner?
We're splitting hairs here. I don't,
That's why.
no, we are. We're splitting hairs.
Complaints.
We're splitting hairs, and I'm not going to get involved. We want to keep this bylaw short, and I don't want any more, I don't think more language than what we've just discussed for the last 10 minutes is warranted. Does anybody disagree with that, other than Rich?
Move.
Okay, that's the last page. Page 8 is done. So, Brian, did we satisfy your, the changes that you made in the, okay, good.
I appreciate the board, hard work and conversation here, so we'll put this in the final form for you. We'll talk about time, but we want to move on to now, other issues at town meeting. We've taken care of town meeting issues.
Just
Board wants to hear some-
Well, we have one.
We have one,
One more.
we may have taken care of town issues, Brian, but I asked the board to come with 3 different issues that they wanted to reconsider from all the testimony that they had heard, and sound was one of them, from 2 people, and where are my notes? Sound was one of them, and the other was, why can't I find my...
It's okay, Ralph, let's move on. It's fine.
The other was complaints, and we just did complaints. So we have sound left, and that's what we're doing tonight, now that we've covered the other issues. So I originally asked Doug a while back, before we decided to change our format here tonight, about sound, and he made some comments about sound. And the, let's see, well, we were on the model that was developed by the state, Massachusetts Department of Energy Resources, and we are on that was on page 7 of their report. So if you want to go to our paragraph about sound, we were on sound impact analysis, page 5, is that right? Am I right? 5B, sound impact analysis. And also sound setbacks, which are on page 6, 2B, under criteria for review. So, discussion on sound. Yeah, Doug?
Well, on page 7 of the model bylaw, the 2011, June
Yep.
2011 version,
Mm-hmm.
on page 7, they have a very succinct description of how sound will be measured, and I just feel like it wouldn't hurt us to add that to our bylaw, unless people think I'm mistaken. I don't think that the way we're describing sound is really as accurate as the way they are. And I just just
Are you
think we
talking
could,
about section 2B on page 6, or are you talking about
We're talking about,
5B on page 5?
I'm talking about the wind turbine model amendment zoning bylaw.
do you have that in front of you? Because if you don't have it in front of you, you can't understand what he's saying.
No, what I'm saying is, are you talking about using this language here on page 5? Or are you talking about using it over here on page 6?
Actually, I'm talking about potentially adding a separate section, just the way this is, in our bylaw, to describe how
May I look
sound
at
shall
this
be
for a second?
considered.
And where do you want to add it, Doug? Where do you want to add it?
Well, it could be anywhere. It's a standalone description of sound and how it shall be contained. So I guess I'll suggest that it be at the end of our sound impact analysis.
Okay.
Or somewhere thereabouts.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, if we put that at the end of sound
Do you have
impact
this?
analysis, which is a reasonable thing to do, we also, unless there are conflicts between what's already in some
You don't have
that
this.
paragraph and what's in here. And I can, and I'm not sure, but if I read this over here where it says, the wind facility shall conform with provisions of DEP's, Division of Air Quality and Noise Regulations, 310 CMR Section 710.
He's reading this.
Okay, and we go over
This
here
is what Doug
to,
wants.
sound setback into number 2B, which refers back to sound impact analysis over here in, number 5, which refers to the manufacturer's documentation.
Rich, I'm going to interrupt you for a minute.
I'm just
It is
reading
not,
this.
I'm not, excuse me, not everyone has a copy of the model amendment. Do you have one down there, any of you?
Could we?
Yeah, then, wait a minute. Then what I'm going to do, Doug, is I'm going to ask you to read that paragraph out of the model
Okay.
so that everybody understands what we're talking about.
And so this is from the model amendment to the zoning ordinance bylaw allowing conditional use of wind energy facilities. It's just a model prepared by the Massachusetts Department of Energy Resources and the Executive Office of Environmental Affairs, June 2011. On page 7, paragraph 3.9.4, sound. The wind facility and associated equipment shall conform with the provisions of the Department of Environmental Protection's Division of Air Quality Noise Regulations, 310 CMR 7.10, unless the department and the permit granting authority agree that those provisions shall not be applicable. A source of sound will be considered to be violating these regulations if the source, A, increases the broadband sound level by more than 10 dBA above ambient, or B, produces a pure tone condition when an octave band center frequency sound pressure level exceeds the 2 adjacent center frequency sound pressure levels by 3 decibels or more. These criteria are measured both at the property line and at the nearest inhabited structure. Ambient is defined as the background, A-weighted sound level that is exceeded 90% of the time measured during equipment hours. The ambient may also be established by other means with consent from DEP. An analysis prepared by a qualified engineer shall be presented to demonstrate the compliance with those standards, with these noise standards, if required by the permit granting authority. The permit granting authority, in consultation with the department, shall determine whether such violations shall be measured at the property line or at the nearest inhabited residence. That gives us not only guidelines, but authority to oversee whether or not the compliance is effective.
Right.
Mr. Chair.
Okay, now, just a moment, Rich. All right, ambient sound level, our definition in our bylaw was taken right out of the definition of, in this particular paragraph, okay? So we complied and followed the guidance of this particular model bylaw that was given out to all the towns so that they could use it and tweak it and make it, maybe use it in their own individual bylaw. I just wanted to make that point. Okay, Pat?
Okay, if you look at both the sound impact analysis and sound setback as in two different places in our bylaw. The only thing that, as far as I can see, that is not in there, well, there are two things. First of all, we're not referring to the provisions of the Department of Environmental Protection.
Right.
Okay, because we're setting up our own standards by
Right.
putting in what we put up. So the only thing that I see that could and probably should be added in, particularly also since it was a ZBA comment on our bylaw, is these criteria are measured both at the property line and at the nearest inhabited structure. And that should probably go in under setbacks, under the sound setback, giving guidance as to where we are looking to have the sound impact analysis done, both for the A-weighted decibels and the pure tone. And then I think we've got that whole segment covered.
Okay. Rich?
I respectfully disagree.
Okay.
I think this whole section that Doug just read should be added. It should be added as 5. What we have now as sound B refers to the applicant giving us the manufacturer's data. And that's, we want to get that, okay? That should be B1. This should be B2, because this will be B2, because it tells us what we do with that data. It's particularly, the applicant will have to be required to have an engineer analyze what the manufacturer's data tells him about how it's going to perform under the specific standards that we don't really have here in our bylaw yet, but which are here. Where is the text here? We don't have anything like increases the broadband sound level to more than 10 decibels above ambient or produces a pure. Do we have anything like that?
Yes, we do, and then it
Yeah.
would provide a conflict, because we're seeing 8.
Okay.
That's the design review criteria. This is what the level, this is the
This is
standard
a-
that they're
this
going to
is
be
a
held to
performance
in
criteria.
performance.
Okay,
So
This
we
is a
don't,
performance
we
criteria.
only have design ideas, not performance standards.
Yeah, so I think.
I mean, I understand that they're in the state law, but they should know that they're going to be held accountable to it.
for no more than 10.
Yeah, what we have here is fine as far as what we get from the applicant, from the manufacturer. That would be B1. And then we just make this B2, make it simple, that this is what we do with it. With the data that we get, this is how we review it.
We should somehow separate the planning design criteria sound from this, which is the standard that they'll be held to. We don't want them trying to design to that, because we've, as you said,
Yeah,
we've said 8 is the design standard.
and even that's a
And
little
that's,
shaky.
and that's on the.
Yeah, this comes under sound, this comes neatly under operating details, and it would just add to, we get the manufacturer's details, and then we specify what those details must meet, the standards that they must meet, right there. That makes sense.
Right.
On page 6, 2 setbacks, 2B, sound setback, we say that the measurements will be taken at the property line. Now, Pat, you have said that you think it should include also the nearest inhabited residence.
I do.
So that's at that time, but there can be residences built after that, and obviously that wouldn't affect it because they weren't there when they received their permit, right?
Understood.
Okay.
Excuse me, Ralph.
Yes,
I'm
Doug?
not sure if it should be on page 6 under criteria for review, because that's part of the planning process. It should be under the operating details, as Rich pointed out. Right?
My offer a suggestion.
Yes.
It might be that you're looking for some form of standard condition. You're going to hold the operators. So if you're looking for a standard condition along these lines, let us write it along, put it in the proper place, we think it makes sense. And I think what I'm hearing from your conversation tonight is that it sounds like it's a standard condition. And I'm willing to
Well,
with your comments on it.
we put it under operating details, and that would also become something that would be ongoing, not just a one-time thing. And if it's an ongoing thing, then it's something that can be brought to the attention of the building commissioner and the board by somebody who is aggrieved by it. So if we put it right in their operating detail, then, boom, I mean, it gives people a right to complain. It gives them a mechanism for complaint.
Okay, take a look at it.
It provides a reasonable standard by which to gauge those complaints. And I think, I do a lot of legal drafting. I think, when I say, I think this should make the most sense being B1 and B2, and just going through this new language just to reconcile any differences with existing language.
Do you want to do
Yeah, on page 5.
I'll give it a go.
Jim?
It's all operating detail. I think Doug and I agree on that, right?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay?
Yep.
I could use some additional information too, on understanding section B, the pure tone condition when an octave band center frequency sound pressure levels exceed the other two adjacent frequency sound pressure levels by 3 decibels or more. I'm not sure I really understand that. And Richard, if you could, do you know what that is? I'd like somebody,
I'm a lawyer, I'm not an engineer.
I really,
I think,
I could use some more information
I
on
might
that.
be able to explain that to you. If you've got, you're measuring sound and it's going across like this, okay? Now you got a spike, okay? And then you go back to your regular whatever it normally is. If that spike exceeds the ones on either side of the spike, either one of those things, it's the amplitude of that particular frequency. If it exceeds more than 3 dBs of the ones on either side of it, then they're saying, in other words, that would be like bang, a big bang. Versus, do you think that's not accurate? That's not the interpretation of that?
I could use some information from an expert outside brought in on that particular
Well, that's
point.
like making a buzz. A squeal. Let's not try to become sound experts. We're just trying to write a bylaw. We're using lots of expert opinions here, or expert advice from models elsewhere. Let's not get excited into this. Let's not get into the minutiae here. We'll try to put a standard condition or an operating detail that integrates that language that makes the board feel more comfortable about it.
Measurable, it's objective.
Measurable, objective.
Well,
We have some others, we'll follow that path, that seems to be the course the board wants.
okay. Well, you can disregard what I said, Jim, because nobody agrees with it.
I don't know.
But,
Sounded good to me.
well, the point is, I don't think if that's not the case, I don't know anybody on this board that can interpret that paragraph.
Well, that was my point. We're going to vote for this.
My point, Jim, is this. This was drafted by people, we assume, on the state level, who have some expertise.
Yeah.
And we don't have it. It is therefore reasonable for us to make that assumption and to incorporate that, which is a rather standard piece of language, which we can assume will be adopted in other towns, so that when we proceed, we will not be creating a jigsaw puzzle throughout the state. If we had the expertise to question what those mean, then maybe we should exercise that expertise, but we don't. But the one thing we do have is a mandate that we put a bylaw in place that is understandable, at least that if you don't understand the reason for that, at least you do understand that that's something that can be measured, that an applicant can come and say, well, here are the measurements, we meet it. And there's also something that can be measured on another piece of property, so that if somebody complains about it, they can get somebody to come in and measure it, and you can go to the building commission and say they're not meeting it. So it isn't just a question of, oh, it hurts me, it's a question of, do they meet the standard or don't they meet the standard? And
Okay.
That's why I thought Doug's suggestion here was very good, that we just take that language as it is, even though we don't have all the expertise to specifically understand what those things mean. At least they are objective and measurable, and you're getting it from the state, which is a reasonable way to proceed. We have to get something passed next April. We have to get something passed on a defensible basis. And the more we can be objective and measurable about things, the more likely it is to get something solved.
Okay. All right. I'm not going to leave the issue of sound until everybody here is agreeable to passing it on to onto our staff and having them come back to us. Bob?
Okay, it's my understanding that we are going to be discussing sound next week, after we get the information from Brian. Okay, so we could table this discussion on sound tonight?
I want to hear the board's comments, that's why.
Well, no, I don't,
I think you heard him.
Well,
like I said, now, Rich, I'm going to let some other people speak. I want to know whether anybody else on the board has anything else to say about sound before we pass it on to the staff. Okay? If you have some comments, I don't care about on page 5 under sound impact analysis or on page 6 under setbacks for sound. That's what I want to hear. Pat?
Okay. On page 5, under B4, I think we all know that we have been talking about A-weighted sound, because that is the sound that the ear hears. But we have heard that maybe is not what is really troubling to people. And the question I have is that we've heard it's probably got to do with amplitude modulation, I believe is the correct term. So what I want to know is under B4, the description there, and I don't even pretend to know what a lot of these terms mean under here, but I am wondering if intermittent sound, sound power, is interpreted as amplitude modulation. And Brian is nodding yes.
We wrote you a very nice memo some months ago about intermittent sound, that's why we adopted that.
I'm just bringing it up because I don't know that that's clear, that this is in our bylaw, that we can request that it be modeled.
Okay. Anybody else? Yeah, Rich?
Just to satisfy Jim's curiosity and mine, I would ask that Brian also do a little research during the week, come back to us with an explanation of what a pure tone condition is. When an octave band center frequency sound pressure level exceeds the two adjacent center frequency sound pressure levels by 3 decibels or more, just explain that to us and explain.
We actually have some information. If the question came at a town meeting, we got a slide. Right, so we're going to show you the slide.
Right, because I think the memo that you sent us a while back had a definition of pure sound, and as a matter of fact, it was from you, I believe.
Yeah, so if you would like another copy of that memo about pure tone, I'm happy to forward it
Right.
to you again.
I remember that.
That was a while ago.
I remember that. Yeah, that would be,
Or
if you could do that to us, that would be great. Electronic copy good enough for you, Rich?
Yeah, sure.
Is an for everybody else? Okay, all right.
got it.
Okay, any other comments on sound impact analysis or sound setbacks? Okay, then we'll move on.
We take all your comments here tonight, put them in a final form. And we'll see you, and I'll put them in a final form because we need to take some action here for the annual town meeting. Probably.
Yep.
So there will be a special town meeting.
Okay.
I'll talk about that a little later.
You mean because we won't make the deadline for the regular town meeting? Is that what you're saying?
The warrant for the annual close is January the 5th. So don't worry, I have a plan.
Okay. Yeah, Doug?
Before we close discussion, I just wanted to point out that in this model, unrelated to sound or any other issues that we've dealt with tonight, a new subject that may have escaped us is that they make mention of the fact that there shall be a building inspector issued permit for any wind energy system. I mean, it seems like a no-brainer that you would need a permit, but as we're writing this new bylaw, should we make mention of that?
You mean
Or
a
is that-
building permit?
Yeah.
Not a permit, not a
building
permit to
permit.
construct, but a building permit.
A building permit to construct it, right?
And
Right.
an inspection,
Yeah.
structural integrity.
I know, but I mean,
I mean,
it seems obvious, but while we're writing a new bylaw, do we need to mention it?
No, I don't think it's necessary.
well, is it in the general bylaw that any structure, including the permits, will have to go through a permit process for the building department and an inspection, for example?
The model bylaw has some permits, or some turbines allowed to a building permit only. And I think that's what you're referring to. The state building code requires a building permit.
Yeah, right,
For
right.
just about everything on God's green earth.
That would probably be a little overkill, but,
Okay,
yeah,
just
I
check.
understand.
Because we're writing a
Yeah.
new law, I don't know
Right,
if that's
yeah, I know.
something we should mention.
Okay,
And then, there was another thing in here, and I don't have the page, but it referred to applicant providing 3 views, a line of sight impact for our review, which is another thing that we hadn't really considered, and it's a last minute thing to consider, but I just thought I'd mention it. We hadn't considered it.
line of sight impact,
Right, to consider the impact that a structure that maybe this large will have on...
visual pollution, in
visual-
other words?
Exactly.
That's a can of worms we don't want to get into.
Okay, just mention it.
Yeah, okay.
Just something else that occurred to me.
Is it in the model?
It is, and that's where I read it, but
So, I mean-
it doesn't mean we have to have it.
So, okay, but that argument's used, we should put it in, other things in it because it's in the model, but now we can pick and choose.
It's just one of
We
the
could-
things that,
Okay,
And
yes.
what are
I
we going
know.
to do with
Making
that?
the point.
What are we going to do with it?
I just want you to remember that when we talk about the model, that it is just a model, and it's for our use and not
That's right.
a mandatory.
That's right, it's not, of course
Because
it's not mandatory. No,
That's the point I was
it's
trying to
not
make.
mandatory.
yeah.
All right, we are
Okay.
going to move on with our agenda. And I thought there were some good comments. Brian, thanks for your help. Arlene, nice to have you back.
You'll have some more information for you next.
Okay, great. And now, why don't we, do you have a rough idea of what else might be on the agenda for next week? Right now?
If we're done with, I don't know, the agenda, Mr. Chairman, I'll bring that up under new business. We're anticipating a joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen.
Oh, that's right, we're going to move it up. Yeah, that's right. Oh, yeah, I remember that. Okay. Releases, there aren't any, are there? None. Releases? No. Committee reports, anybody have a committee report? No? New business? Brian?
We're going to have a joint meeting next week with the Board of Selectmen Monday night. So what I'd like to do is meet with them, hopefully very early in the evening, with regards to some issues, let's go over with the Cape Cod Commission. And then have your meeting, a planning board meeting, right afterwards at 7 o'clock. It would be Monday. Where you would have to finalize some of this language for the annual town meeting because the warrant closes January 4th. There will be a special town meeting, and that warrant closes January 28th. So it gives you some time to do some other refinements and maybe some other votes. Monday night, I'm going to ask you to vote some language here for this bylaw, and then an article, 2 articles, one article for the bylaw, and then an article probably to essentially, the article fails. The board should have a backup that has an article that essentially bans them.
The what?
That would ban them, that would eliminate them as a use allowed throughout the town. That would be the de facto moratorium that gets you to the town. So I discussed that with the board Monday, and then work on this with the board towards the special.
Okay.
That's my plan here, in business, so that's why I emailed the board and asked you for your availability Monday.
Right, so we will meet in here with the Board of Selectmen, and then we will adjourn to another meeting in another room, and we will hold our own meeting at another venue.
Monday night, finish up the annual town meeting stuff. We'll have a little time in January to close in on the special
Okay.
So that's my new business information for
Okay. Brian, I would ask that maybe you could send us just a brief memo alerting us as to the little bit of the background and subject matter on the issue that we'll be discussing with the Board of Selectmen. It's about the regional impact of the,
We get an email tomorrow morning from Joyce, have the document that you'll be discussing.
okay.
And then I'll follow that up in the morning.
Okay, great, thanks. All right, correspondence, we've already done that. I do have here, however, two things that were in my packet that were opened up. One is remember that. One is a copy of the five-year strategic plan that the Board of Selectmen have developed, and there was one item in there. This will be available in the office. One item where we were one of the responsible parties, and that was the thresholds, the land use vision map, which we've discussed at length already. And so that was the only one in which we were noted as the responsible party, and that's for 2013 and 2014. So we're still in the process of discussing that. We haven't decided one way or the other on that. And the other one was a copy of the final report by the Charter Review Committee, of which Paul and I were on. And I would just like to read to you the article that was approved by town meeting and will be voted on next May to be incorporated in the change of the charter. So this is how the charter refers to the planning board. The change of the planning board. The planning boards, regarding the planning board, to read, the planning board shall be responsible for the development and periodic review of a master plan or portions thereof. We call that the local comprehensive plan, which we are doing. Such a plan may include all or portions of plans developed by other boards or committees, but these inclusions must be approved by a vote of the planning board. So for instance, if the master plan, if the local comprehensive plan refers to the recreation plan or some other plan that's in the town, then we have to vote to include that. The master plan, also known as the local comprehensive plan, shall be submitted to town meeting and then to the Cape Cod Commission. So that's what we are currently working on. And then that's it, basically. So that's how the charter refers to the planning board. Let's see, back to the agenda. That takes care of correspondence. That's it. I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.